Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. At 3:57 a.m., a phone call shattered the silence. You no longer own this property, but James Albury had never left his home. What began as a bizarre HOA claim spiraled into a dark conspiracy of fraud, stolen houses, and a battle one man refused to lose. They picked the wrong target. I woke to the shrill buzz of my cell phone cutting through the stillness of the bedroom. The clock on the nightstand glowed a murky green. 3:57 in the morning. My wife stirred beside me, mumbling something about wrong numbers, but I was already reaching for the phone. On the screen, in blocky letters, it said HOA Security Dispatch. That alone made me sit up straighter. We didn't belong to any homeowners association. We'd moved to this house in the Nevada mountains precisely to avoid that nonsense. I swiped to answer and put the phone to my ear. A woman's voice, clipped, rehearsed, came through. "Mr. Albury, why are you on the property? Didn't you receive the eviction notice? The board voted last night. You're no longer permitted to be there." For a second, I just stared into the darkness, blinking. My dogs perked up at the edge of the bed, sensing my mood. "Excuse me?" I finally said. "Who the hell are you, and what property do you think I'm on?" The woman repeated the same line, slower this time, as if I were a dim student. "Sir, Timber Ridge community voted to reclaim the residence due to abandonment. You are trespassing. Security is en route." And then the line went dead. My first thought was some crank caller or a scam, but the hairs on the back of my neck were up. I swung my legs out of bed, shoved my feet into boots, and padded to the kitchen. Through the window above the sink, I could see headlights at the end of our long driveway, unmoving, throwing twin beams across the pines. I killed the lights inside and slipped out the side door, my two shepherd mixes shadowing me, tails low. At the gate, a black SUV idled, engine rumbling. Across the hood in reflective vinyl, it read Timber Ridge HOA Patrol. That was not a prank. On the hood, weighed down with a rock, sat a clear plastic file folder. I approached slowly, keeping the dogs at heel. Inside the folder was a stack of papers, official-looking, stamped and signed. The top page read, "Notice of Loss of Ownership Rights." Below that, a board meeting protocol with 9 signatures. The stated reason, property deemed abandoned, returned to the administration of Timber Ridge HOA under Emergency Transfer Act. At the bottom, in bold, new owner, Timber Ridge HOA. My hands tightened on the plastic. Emergency Transfer Act. This was my house, paid for in cash, registered in my name. We'd been here every day baking bread and chopping wood while our daughter did her homework at the kitchen table. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I pulled my phone, snapped photos of the SUV, the plates, the documents. Then I walked back up the drive, the dogs bristling, and launched my drone from the porch. Its camera buzzed to life, rising above the trees to capture a wide shot of the vehicle and the men inside. 2 silhouettes glowing in infrared. My training as a crime scene investigator kicked in automatically. Document everything before they could deny it existed. As the drone circled, I dialed the sheriff's dispatch and explained, as calmly as I could at 4 in the morning, that someone claiming to be HOA security was at my gate with forged eviction papers. 20 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through the trees. A county cruiser rolled up behind the SUV. The driver of the black vehicle slipped out and conferred with the deputy, papers in hand. I walked down with my phone recording. The deputy looked uncomfortable as he approached me. "Mr. Albury, our system shows a notice of removal was filed on this property at the recommendation of Timber Ridge HOA. Says the owner's been absent for over 30 days. My stomach turned. "I've been here every damn day," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is my home. I'm looking at my wife and kid asleep inside right now." He shifted, clearly out of his depth. "Do you have any proof of occupancy?" he asked quietly. I almost laughed. "You want proof? I've got cameras covering every inch of this land. I've got delivery logs, bank records, dog food receipts. I can show you bread rising in my kitchen from last night if that helps." The deputy's eyes flicked toward the SUV. He lowered his voice. "Off the record, I've seen something like this once before. HOA pulls some paperwork, says the place is abandoned, tries to take it. It's ugly. You're going to need to move fast." He handed back the plastic file. "Keep this. Don't sign anything." I nodded, my pulse pounding, and looked past him at the 2 men by the SUV, staring at me like vultures. My dogs growled low. Whatever this was, it wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had decided, in the middle of the night, to erase me from my own property. By the time the sun broke over the ridgeline, I was already at my workbench, printing out camera logs and delivery receipts. I hadn't slept. The two HOA patrolmen had eventually driven off without further comment, the deputy trailing behind them, but the message had been loud and clear. Someone was trying to make it look like I didn't live here. I needed proof. Not just gut feelings and righteous anger, but hard, time-stamped evidence. If I didn't move fast, I had a bad feeling I'd come home one day and find locks changed and my tools sold off at a community auction. I started with the security footage. The camera overlooking the driveway had been recording in full 4K for months. I exported clips of me unloading lumber from my truck, my daughter biking circles in the gravel, my wife setting out recycling every Friday morning. One clip showed me pulling a tray of bread out of the wood-fired oven with steam rising in the cold air. That was from 2 days ago. I time-stamped every file and burned copies onto flash drives. Next, I pulled my delivery logs from UPS, FedEx, and USPS. 41 packages delivered in the last 30 days, each one signed for, some with me smiling like an idiot on the front porch holding a box of screws or a cast iron pan. Then came bank transactions, grocery runs to the local market, 3 purchases at the hardware store in town, a veterinary bill from last week when our younger dog sprained a paw chasing a squirrel into the woodpile. Every single one geotagged, time-stamped, and localized. I was halfway through printing the last batch when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Ailbury," said a familiar voice. "Deputy Raines, the officer from last night. Listen, I just got off a call with dispatch. We've got a bit of a situation here. Your property is flagged as disputed occupancy in the county system." I froze. What the hell does that mean? He exhaled. "It means someone filed a formal complaint through the HOA office saying your property was abandoned and that there's no legal resident present. That complaint was submitted 2 weeks ago and automatically entered into the registry because no one contested it." My mouth went dry. "And no one thought to verify it?" Apparently, the evidence included photos of an empty driveway, no mail pickup, and a notarized witness statement. "From who?" "I can't see the full report unless you file a counterclaim," he said. "But I can tell you right now, you're not the only one this has happened to. If you want this reversed, you'll need to go through the registrar's office, in person." I didn't waste time. I left a note for my wife, packed up all my documents, and hit the road. It took me 40 minutes to reach the county land registrar's office, a squat, aging building with faded signage and fluorescent lights that buzzed louder than any human voice. At the records desk, I explained the situation. The clerk, a woman in her 60s who smelled like stale coffee and lavender lotion, frowned and started typing. "Albury James, parcel ID TR04978. Yep, I see it. There's a note here. Abandoned residence. No occupancy detected. Property reclaimed under Timber Ridge HOA emergency transfer claim. Recorded change of ownership effective date, 2 weeks ago." "Excuse me," I said, my voice rising. "There was no abandonment. I've been there every day." "I'm just reading what's on the screen, sir," she said, not unkindly. "It looks like a supplemental expansion map was filed by Timber Ridge HOA the day before the reclamation claim. Your parcel is now listed within their jurisdiction." I gripped the counter so hard it creaked. This property was never part of Timber Ridge. I bought it specifically outside of HOA reach. "You may need to speak to the mapping division," she offered. "They handle zoning and jurisdiction changes." 10 minutes later, I was in a cramped back office facing a zoning officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Timber Ridge filed a jurisdictional boundary expansion, annexed 8 parcels into what they labeled a future development buffer zone. Yours was one of them. Then they used that map to justify an emergency property claim under their bylaws. It's creative. I'll give them that. So they just drew a line around my house and decided they owned it? Legally? No. But procedurally. It's murky. The real problem is the Emergency Transfer Act. It allows HOA boards to temporarily seize property if it's proven to be abandoned and if no owner responds within the notice period. I stared at him. "But I never got any notice." He pulled up the digital record. "It was sent to this address." He rotated the screen. The listed address was a P.O. box in a town I hadn't even heard of. Someone had created a fake contact address for me. That was the moment it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a calculated move. Someone had fabricated evidence of my absence, redirected official mail, redrawn jurisdictional lines, and filed ownership transfer paperwork, all while I was living in the damn house with my family. As I walked back to my truck, brain racing, phone buzzing with unread emails, a message popped in from a name I didn't recognize. It simply read, "I know what they did to you. It happened to me too. Call me." By the time I got back to the house that evening, the mountain sky was going black, and the first stars were coming out. My wife met me on the porch, worry written all over her face. I handed her the printouts and flash drives like they were weapons. "It's worse than I thought," I said. "They've actually filed papers saying we abandoned the place. 2 weeks ago, the county recorded Timber Ridge as the new owner." She didn't even speak, just went inside and started packing our important files into a metal lockbox. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started digging. Whoever sent that message, "It happened to me too," had left a number. I called. A man answered on the second ring. He sounded older, tired. "Name's Peter Harwood," he said. "I owned a cabin on the South Slope, left for a VA hospital stay, came back. HOA had reclaimed it. Same Emergency Transfer Act. Same fake notices. I lost everything." His voice cracked. "They sold my cabin before I could fight it. Be careful, Mr. Albry, they play dirty." I thanked him and hung up, heart thudding. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. And unless I moved, we'd end up like Peter, our home in somebody else's portfolio. I opened a new folder on my computer, Timber Ridge, Evidence. Into it went every scan, every photo, every email. Then I started on a formal petition to the county court for an emergency injunction, halting any transfer, sale, or action on my property until the dispute was resolved. My law enforcement background was paying off. I knew how to word things so a judge couldn't ignore them. The next morning, before the coffee even finished brewing, a silver pickup truck rolled into my driveway. 2 men in navy jackets with Timber Ridge HOA compliance badges stepped out, holding papers. One, a heavy-set guy with a clipboard, spoke first. "Mr. Albry, we're here to serve notice. You are required to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in removal." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Get off my property," he frowned. "This is no longer your property." I held up my phone, recording. "You're trespassing. Leave now." They exchanged looks but stayed where they were. "Sir, we're trying to resolve this amicably." "You're trying to steal my house in broad daylight," I snapped. "The sheriff has my complaint. The court has my petition. Every second you're here is more evidence for my lawyer." That got through. They backed off, muttering about escalating to legal. I watched them drive off, dust curling behind their tires, then went inside and slammed the door. My wife was pale but steady. "What now?" she asked. "Now," I said, "we go on the offensive." I called my old contact at the local paper, a reporter named Laura Klein who had covered one of my cases back in Albuquerque before I retired. When she picked up and heard my story, her voice sharpened. "This is theft under color of law," she said. "If I can verify the documents, I'll run it front page." I emailed her scans of the fake notices, the boundary map, and the emergency transfer claim. Within an hour, she called back. "It checks out. The expansion map was filed the day before the transfer claim. They're using a zoning loophole meant for actual emergencies. This stinks." She asked if she could interview me on record. I agreed. If this turned into a fight, sunlight would be my best disinfectant. That afternoon, I took the dogs on a long perimeter walk, making sure every camera was functioning and every gate locked. The pines whispered in the wind like an audience holding its breath. I could almost feel eyes on me from the road below. Neighbors? HOA scouts? Hard to tell. I wasn't a paranoid man by nature, but I'd built crime scenes from less circumstantial evidence than this. Someone had drawn a circle around my life and was trying to erase it. Well, I'd spent 15 years taking apart other people's lies. It was time to take apart theirs. Before dusk, I received a text from Deputy Raines. "Be advised, HOA filed a notice of non-compliance claiming you threatened their agents. They're setting up a paper trail. Stay cool. Document everything." I texted back a single word: always. The article dropped the next morning under the headline, "HOA reclaims mountain homes without consent. A legal loophole or coordinated land grab." It hit harder than I expected. My inbox exploded. Messages from neighbors I'd barely met, old colleagues, even strangers from other counties. But one email stopped me cold. Subject line, "We need to talk. They did it to us too." Attached was a spreadsheet listing 6 properties in the Timber Ridge area flagged as abandoned in the past year. 4 of them showed HOA as the new owner. 2 had already been sold to outside buyers. I called the sender, a woman named Lisa Tran. Her parents had lost a lakeside cottage the same way, only realizing it was gone when they returned for a holiday and found new locks and strangers living inside. HOA said it was reallocated per emergency procedure. Her family had been fighting in court for over 6 months. She agreed to share everything she had: copies of complaints, fake notices, digital headers on emailed transfer forms. "They always go for people who live part-time or keep to themselves," she told me. "They think no one will notice until it's too late." That night, I asked my daughter to help me dig deeper. She's sharper with a laptop than I'll ever be. We traced metadata from the PDFs used in Lisa's case and the forms in mine. Same document structure, same software, same embedded timestamps. We extracted the IP addresses tied to the electronic filings, one repeated across 3 claims. A residential IP located inside Timber Ridge, linked to a home registered to Karen Westbrook, current HOA president. I stared at the screen in silence. It wasn't just sloppy paperwork. This was intentional, coordinated, and it pointed straight to the top. I looped in Laura, the reporter, and my newly hired attorney, Leah Sorensen, a pit bull in a gray suit with years of experience in real estate fraud and property disputes. When she saw the documents, her eyebrows lifted. "We've got them cold, if we can prove this chain publicly. But they won't go down quietly. Be ready for counterfire." Sure enough, that fire came by midweek. First, I received a cease and desist letter from the law firm representing Timber Ridge HOA, accusing me of defamation and harassment. Then came an anonymous tip to Child Protective Services claiming unsafe living conditions at our home. My daughter came home in tears after 2 agents visited her school. Luckily, I had enough cameras, clean records, and school transcripts to shut that down fast. But it was clear they weren't just trying to win, they were trying to bury me. Leah filed a preliminary injunction with the district court, attaching the IP trace, forged signatures, and timeline analysis. We requested full discovery into HOA's recent property claims. Simultaneously, Laura published a follow-up piece. Digital fingerprints tie Timber Ridge HOA president to alleged fraud scheme. That same afternoon, a second former Timber Ridge resident reached out, an elderly widow named Dolores, whose hillside cabin was seized while she was in rehab recovering from a fall. "They told me I'd forfeited my rights because my lawn was overgrown," she whispered over the phone. "I paid my taxes on time, I just couldn't reach the mailbox." The deeper we looked, the uglier it got. Every abandoned property had followed the same pattern: a quiet owner or part-time resident. A HOA expansion map filed a few days before, a false mailing address used to reroute legal notices, a transfer form with the same digital signature trail. Within 2 weeks, property reclassified, resold, or reclaimed. I reached out to a digital forensic analyst I'd worked with years ago on a cartel case. He scrubbed the server data Leah's firm had subpoenaed from the HOA's public records archive. And bingo, Karen's personal account had downloaded and re-uploaded at least 8 PDF property claims, all with doctored metadata. The server logs were still there, time-stamped and irrefutable. But just when I thought we were closing in, the HOA played its boldest move yet. I came home to find a sleek, silver Lexus SUV parked inside my gate and a real estate agent walking the perimeter with a clipboard. When I confronted her, she smiled thinly and said she was here to assess the listing value for the HOA's new holding. I asked her to leave. She refused. I called the sheriff again. This time, I showed them everything: documents, logs, footage, court filings. The deputy reviewed it all, then called in his supervisor. 20 minutes later, they escorted the agent off my property. As the sun set behind the pines, I stood on the porch watching them disappear down the road. The air was cold and still, but my blood was hot. They'd tried to sell my house while I was still in it. Now, it wasn't just me filing complaints. 4 other families had joined my case. A lawsuit was forming. And Timber Ridge HOA didn't know it yet, but their next board meeting might just include a grand jury subpoena. The morning we filed the class action suit, Leah handed me a manila envelope across the hood of her car. "In here," she said, tapping it, "are the signatures of 5 plaintiffs, 14 exhibits, and a motion for injunctive relief. We're not just asking them to stop, were demanding a full rollback of every fraudulent property transfer they executed in the past 18 months. I took it with both hands like a loaded weapon, because that's what it was. Legal firepower. The filing named Karen Westbrook, Timber Ridge HOA, and 3 board members as co-defendants in an escalating scheme of fraudulent seizure, document forgery, and abuse of authority under HOA charter powers. But the real weight of our case was in the evidence. Leah's team had brought in a private handwriting analyst, a gray-haired man with the voice of a tired preacher and eyes like a microscope. He ran side-by-side comparisons of the signatures on the HOA's abandonment affidavits and the actual signatures of witnesses, taken from DMV records, mortgage paperwork, even Christmas cards one lady had mailed. Verdict? At least 8 signatures were falsified, not similar, not forged attempts, direct digital cut and pastes, sometimes with identical pixel artifacts. The zoning maps had holes too. My parcel had allegedly been included by unanimous vote during a Timber Ridge board meeting on the 3rd of March. Problem? That meeting didn't legally exist. The HOA secretary under deposition admitted she never attended such a meeting, and the minutes were typed and printed on a document template she'd never used. I didn't write that, she said, trembling in Leah's office. I don't even know what half those statutes mean. While Leah built the legal machine, I focused on fortifying the property. A licensed cadastral surveyor I hired out of Reno ran a high-resolution drone pass over the land. His findings were simple. There is no geographic or legal basis for including this parcel inside Timber Ridge jurisdiction. Not now. Not ever. His GPS overlays proved my property was registered as a non-HOA enclave in the original subdivision plat, documented in county archives dating back to 1982. We included that overlay in the filing. Meanwhile, the pressure was mounting on Timber Ridge. Laura's stories had gone viral, picked up by a national blog on property rights abuse, then echoed across HOA watchdog forums. Reddit got hold of it and ran wild. One popular meme had Karen's face photoshopped onto a Monopoly card that read, "Advance to go," and collect other people's houses. By the time her attorney tried issuing a cease and desist to the press, the internet had already chewed her name into infamy. But the tipping point came from inside. A man named Julian Marrow, a former HOA board member, reached out to us through Leah. "I resigned 2 months ago," he said. "Karen said she was just reclaiming derelict properties to beautify the neighborhood. But then I saw the internal memos." He handed over printed emails from Karen's personal Gmail account, forwarded to the HOA board aliases. One subject line read, "We can get 3 more before anyone notices." Another, "Use new mailing address for Albury. I've set up the redirect. Game over." Leah filed a motion to amend the complaint, adding intentional fraud, mail fraud, and RICO violations. Yes, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That escalated the case from civil dispute to potential criminal conspiracy. The county court fast-tracked the motion for preliminary hearing. But in the meantime, Timber Ridge fired back with a vengeance. First, my wife's vehicle was keyed top to bottom in the school parking lot. No witnesses, of course. Then our mailbox was smashed. A coyote carcass was dumped at the bottom of our driveway, its head turned toward the house. Someone was trying to send a message. I installed additional floodlights, doubled my surveillance capacity, and reported every incident to the sheriff. One night, I spotted a drone hovering silently above our chimney, its red light blinking like a sniper's dot. I knocked it out of the air with a shotgun blast. The HOA filed a harassment complaint. Didn't matter, because the following week, we received confirmation. A judge signed the warrant for a full forensic search of Timber Ridge HOA offices. Leah's investigator smiled when he read it. They won't just find Karen's fingerprints on those fake documents. They'll find her keyboard strokes, her router logs, her whole digital trail. At sunrise, I watched from a turnout off County Road 22 as 3 black and whites and a county van pulled up outside the Timber Ridge office. Officers entered with boxes, evidence bags, and a camera crew following behind. Karen came out 5 minutes later in slippers and a bathrobe, shouting at them to get off private HOA property. But this time, no one listened. I got the call just after noon on a Thursday. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped, and official. "Mr. Albury, this is Deputy Vaughn from the Sheriff's Department. Just letting you know the operation's underway. Warrants active. You'll be contacted by the District Attorney's Office later today." and "Thank you for cooperating. We don't see many cases built this tight." I thanked him and hung up, staring at the lake behind my property, where a pair of ducks floated peacefully, completely unaware that across the ridge a criminal conspiracy was finally coming undone. But the peace didn't last long. By 4 p.m., a news van was parked at the Timber Ridge gates, joined by 3 more within an hour. Overhead, a helicopter with a camera mount hovered, sweeping over the HOA's headquarters like a vulture circling a kill. Reports were already leaking. Nevada HOA under investigation for property theft scheme, one Kyron read. Eviction scam targets quiet homeowners, said another. I watched it unfold from my living room, arms crossed, dogs at my feet, Leah beside me reviewing court filings. Then she pointed. That's her. Karen Westbrook was being escorted out of the HOA office building, flanked by 2 plainclothes investigators. She wasn't handcuffed, not yet, but the expression on her face was feral, defiant. The mask had cracked, and now the whole world could see what was underneath. Authorities seized 4 laptops, 2 external drives, and a wall safe from the HOA premises. The local forensics team started analyzing everything immediately. Within 48 hours, they confirmed what we had suspected. Dozens of forged documents, including eviction notices, abandonment affidavits, and false parcel maps. The metadata showed who created them, when, and where, and that many of them were uploaded through an IP address assigned to Karen's personal home router. The judge approved emergency court orders to halt any HOA transactions, freeze accounts, and prevent sale or reassignment of disputed properties. One of the board members, caught in a panic, tried to resign and flee the state. He was intercepted at McCarran International Airport with $34,000 in cash and 2 fake IDs. Meanwhile, the DA issued subpoenas for HOA meeting recordings. According to their bylaws, every vote had to be audio recorded and archived. What the investigators found was astonishing. Some votes didn't exist at all. In others, Karen's voice could be heard pressuring board members, even offering bribes. "Just sign it, Doug," she said on one. "He hasn't been there in a month. He'll never know." But I knew, and now everyone else did too. The criminal charges followed fast. 9 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of document forgery, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit real estate theft, and 1 count of organized fraud under Nevada statute. Karen Westbrook was arrested in her home at 5:42 a.m. the next morning. This time, there were handcuffs. But the storm wasn't over. Timber Ridge residents had started to revolt. I got messages from people I'd never met. Single moms, elderly couples, even former HOA volunteers. They thanked me. They apologized. One man, a retired postal worker named Ray, said, "I watched them take my neighbor's home last year. I thought maybe he'd died. Now I realize I didn't ask the right questions." A group of homeowners organized a special emergency meeting to dissolve the current HOA leadership. Over 100 members showed up in the rec center auditorium. One woman brought a framed photo of her late husband, saying he died before he could fight the eviction. "This is for him," she said, holding it up. The vote was unanimous. The board was suspended. A third-party conservator was appointed by the court. But despite all this, I wasn't ready to relax. Late one night, I was walking my property with a flashlight when I spotted a shape near the tree line. My dogs growled. I stepped forward and saw a man in a hoodie sprinting into the woods. By the time I got there, he was gone. But he left behind something more chilling, a printed photo of my house taped to a tree with the words "Stay Gone" scrawled across it in red marker. The sheriff responded fast. They dusted the paper, checked my cameras. Nothing useful this time, but I reinforced my fences, installed motion-triggered lights, and quietly bought a backup generator and satellite phone, just in case. Then came the biggest bombshell yet. Leah called me on a Sunday evening, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. "James, you're going to want to sit down." "What is it?" "We just got a federal notification. Because the HOA received interstate mail and submitted forms through federally regulated databases, the feds are stepping in. The DOJ is opening a RICO investigation. This just became a federal case." I sat down slowly. The ducks were gone now. Just me, the wind, and a storm that had finally grown too big for Karen to control. The days that followed were a whirlwind of subpoenas, depositions, and media insanity. I found myself at the center of something much bigger than a property dispute. By Monday morning, I had 3 missed calls from CNN, 2 from a legal podcast I'd never heard of, and even 1 cryptic voicemail from a Netflix producer. Leah joked that if this kept up, she'd need a press secretary just to manage my schedule. But while the outside world exploded with attention, I stayed focused on one thing: accountability. I spent 2 full days at the district attorney's office providing sworn testimony. My evidence was laid out across an entire wall: maps, screenshots, bank records, drone footage, and the real gem: the internal emails from the HOA's Google Workspace that had been recovered during the warrant execution. One message from Karen to the board literally said, "Get the signatures. The old man won't fight it. He's too isolated." To which someone replied, "Let's just say the place was vacant. The system moves faster when no one's home." I wasn't even the only old man they tried this on. More victims began surfacing: a widowed Vietnam veteran in a wheelchair who was evicted while in rehab, a young couple deployed overseas whose home was sold while they were on active duty, a single mother whose absentee notice had been forged while she was caring for her dying sister. Karen and her allies had created a pattern, and the DOJ now had enough to label it a criminal enterprise under federal RICO statutes. I'd always heard about RICO from crime shows, never thought I'd see it unfold in real time, and definitely never expected to be part of the reason it got triggered. But here we were. Multiple defendants, predicate acts, ongoing criminal pattern, and intent to defraud through an organization. The trial date was set within 3 weeks. Karen pled not guilty, of course, but her co-conspirators started to crack. The board's treasurer accepted a plea deal and turned over everything: meeting minutes, bank transfers, even a burner phone Karen used for off-the-record business. They had tracked cash kickbacks from house sales to 3 board members and traced the money straight to an LLC registered in Wyoming, one that was just a shell to launder stolen real estate. I sat in the courtroom during the first pre-trial hearing. Karen looked thinner, twitchier. Her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for a fire exit. When the judge denied her bail extension, she swore under her breath and had to be escorted out. Her lawyer, some slick West Coast type in a shiny blue suit, barely looked up from his notes. It was clear even he was losing hope. Meanwhile, Timber Ridge was imploding from the inside. The conservator found over $240,000 in unauthorized maintenance payments, double-paid invoices, and mysteriously vanished reserve funds. One invoice billed $7,500 for mailbox repainting. The HOA residents, now furious, filed a class action lawsuit demanding reimbursement of dues and damages for illegal evictions. The local paper dubbed it the Timber Ridge Theft Ring. The name stuck. It was the top story for weeks. And through all of it, I kept working, installing new fencing, replacing locks, installing remote camera towers, and finishing the solar array I'd meant to build months ago. If anything, this mess had made me appreciate how fragile peace really was. But then came the moment I didn't see coming. The DA's office called and asked me to appear in court, not just as a witness, but to formally reclaim legal ownership of my land. Even though the fraudulent transfer had been rolled back, the law required a declaratory hearing to establish restitution and permanent title reinstatement. I brought every original deed, every notarized filing, and stood in front of a judge who reviewed my documents for all of 15 minutes before stamping them with a heavy-handed thud. "Mr. Albury," she said, peering over her glasses, "this home was stolen from you under false pretenses. The court hereby restores full and exclusive title to your name. No HOA, no community board, no third-party authority may ever claim jurisdiction over your property again. This ruling is permanent. Congratulations. You're free." I didn't realize how much I'd been holding my breath until that moment. When I stepped out into the hallway, Leah was waiting with our daughter in tow. She grinned and handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a fresh sourdough loaf. She'd baked it that morning. I laughed and shook my head. "What's this for?" She shrugged. "For reclaiming our home, and because I knew you wouldn't eat anything during court." I tore off a piece and handed some to our kid, who gave me a big toothy grin. Then I looked down the hallway. Clean, quiet, sunlight streaming in through the windows. The courthouse wasn't my home, but it was the place where I finally got it back. 2 months later, the Timber Ridge HOA was nothing but a line item in a court archive. Its office building had been foreclosed, its signs torn down, and its website redirected to a blank page reading, "This organization has been permanently dissolved by court order." But the fallout was far from over. Karen Westbrook was convicted on 9 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The jury didn't take long. Between the forged signatures, IP logs from her home Wi-Fi, and testimony from former board members who had turned state's evidence, her defense collapsed like a rotten beam under its own weight. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison without parole. Her smug mask shattered when she heard the verdict. She tried to make a statement, but the judge cut her off cold. You preyed on the trust of a community. You weaponized bureaucracy for personal gain. This court is not interested in your justifications, only in justice. 2 other board members got between 6 and 9 years. The tech contractor pled out for 7 after his fingerprints were found on the altered server logs and the vacancy photos submitted to the county. Photos which, hilariously, had a timestamp visible in the metadata from the wrong year. You'd think if you were stealing homes, you'd at least check your XIF data. But justice didn't just come in the form of prison time. The judge ordered full financial restitution to all defrauded homeowners. My property was already secured, but now I was entitled to damages for emotional distress, legal costs, and unlawful detainer claims. The total payout, over $320,000. Most of the money came from the sale of the fake LLC properties Karen had transferred out. The rest was seized from HOA bank accounts and a personal trust in her name that she'd created just months before the scheme started. She had even tried to hide a chunk of it in a crypto wallet, but the cyber expert I hired helped track the wallet down. The passphrase was based on her Pomeranian's name. I used the funds to do what I always meant to do, build a guest house out back, away from the main cabin, nestled against the slope of the pines. Not fancy, but peaceful. It's where I write now, mostly. I even started a small consulting practice. Nothing big, just helping folks navigate the increasingly absurd world of property law and HOA entanglements. People email me from all over Nevada, Arizona, Utah. Some even fly out just to ask for advice in person. I always tell them the same thing. You want to win against a corrupt HOA. Get your paper trail airtight. Get your cameras mounted. And never underestimate how far a narcissist will go, or how fast they crumble when exposed. We put up a new gate after the trial. Heavier steel, remote access, backed by a solar battery array. On the gate, there's a plaque. It's hand engraved, nothing grand. It just reads, "Private property not subject to HOA. Try me." Sometimes I sit with Leah on the porch and watch the sun roll down behind the ridge. The dogs bark at coyotes and squirrels. The wind stirs the trees. And I remember that night, 3:57 a.m., that dumb call, that arrogant voice telling me I didn't belong in my own home. They picked the wrong man, and now the whole damn country knows it.